If you don't mind just telling us your first name and I guess telling us a little bit about your childhood.
My first name is Ella. Last name is Lowenberg. I would say that I had a very complex and traumatic childhood. It started from when I was an infant, when I was 2 months old, and I was living in Colorado Springs at the time. I was born March 26, 1996, and when I was 2 months old, I was placed into foster care as an emergency because my biological father shook me. And if you're not familiar with it, shaken baby syndrome is very fatal because of the developing infant in their brain and the skull not being fully formed around the brain and the brain just going back and forth, kind of like a whiplash in a way. And I obviously I don't remember, but I've been told multiple times from my mom, from my grandma, and then even my foster mom to this day. And when I was in foster care, my foster parents actually petitioned the court in Colorado Springs because my foster mom she realized that my mom was innocent in this. So in regards to like the custody issue, all rights were revoked for my mom, my dad, or my biological father in that sense, and even my grandparents here in Denver. And once I was in the care of my foster parents, they realized that my mom was innocent and that even my grandparents were innocent. And so they petitioned the courts for my mom to actually stay with them during that time. And I actually started having seizures from the abuse that happened because I had suffered a bifrontal contusion and I had multiple fractures, and I even was talking with my grandma about it a few years ago, and she told me something that different, or not different, but more to the story. They had actually taken me into the doctor a week before that happened, and they realized that at that moment that there were old fractures and bruises starting to heal. So when that incident happened in May, they realized that this isn't just a one-time thing. It was reoccurring, and it was a very long court case. My biological father ended up actually losing his rights, and my mom got custody of me. And after that happened, they moved back from Colorado Springs to Denver. And when I was growing up, my papa died actually when I was 4 years old. And I think that was from what happened to me and my mom being forced to kind of like go to classes and kind of put forth the work to get me back. And then even with my papa dying, I think that was the biggest trigger for her. And that's what led, I believe, to her becoming an alcoholic. And I don't remember my papa much. I remember him very, very minimally. But my nana was saying that he had a very difficult time with what happened to me, and he actually passed away from esophageal cancer, and the treatment that was for it, because he contracted pneumonia. And after that happened with my mom drinking and everything, it was a very dark time. From about, like, I would say 5 years old to 8, I would actually have to hide, call the police, or actually call my grandma. And it was hard because
You were hiding from your mom because of the drinking?
Mm-hmm. And it was hard because I was alone. Like, I felt alone, and not having somebody else understand what I was going through, and not having that love and security and protection that a child needed. And there's still a lot of tension to this day between my mom and I. And I'll be honest, I resented her for the longest time because of that, because I didn't have that love and security that I craved and that I needed. And when I was 8, she actually got sober. She realized that she was missing my childhood. She realized that she needed to be that mom I needed. And praise God, just from the moment I was an infant and that happened to just having her be sober, like I've seen him work in my life in so many ways, and in the life of others too. Especially with what happened when I was an infant. I should be dead. I should not be abled. I should not be this mentally abled. I should actually have deficiencies, or I should actually have disabilities in regards to that, suffering from shaken baby syndrome, because so many kids, I've looked up cases, like so many kids do not come out the way that I've come out. Kids have severe ailments or severe disabilities, and I just see my life and the circumstances surrounding it as God working through it, and God purposing it for something else and something bigger. And even with my mom, she's actually been sober for about, I would say it's been about almost 19 years from that moment. When I was 8, she was actually in the hospital getting her stomach pumped while my grandma and my aunt took me out to celebrate my birthday. And shortly after that, she remarried. And when I was about 11 or 12, and then when I was actually 12 years old, my sister was born, and then when I was 13, my brother was born. And I would say, just again, that tension and the tension and that resentment was still there with my mom. And growing up as an adolescent now, I crave that attention. And being an only child to having siblings, it was such a different dynamic and shift. I felt as if no one was in my corner anymore. No one was there for me anymore. I didn't have that comfort and security. I had it in a way that if I acted out or if I was defiant, I would get that attention, but I felt as if my needs were neglected in such a way. And so I actually reached out to different avenues for that love and attention, and I didn't tell anybody because I had such a shame and such a guilt for doing that, because a little girl shouldn't be doing that. A little girl shouldn't be going to different avenues for love and attention that she wasn't getting from her family. And when I was a teenager, I started working out. I started getting healthy. I started eating better. I started being more active, and I started lifting. And it was a lot more manageable because of my depression and anxiety. And then with the environment that I was living in with my parents and everything, it was hard because I felt that I wasn't understood. I felt that my depression and anxiety weren't real because mental health in my family was such a taboo. Mm-hmm. And when I was in high school, my lifting actually took off. I was getting not recognized. I was getting such good recognition in regards to going to state, going to nationals, and then even making the powerlifting team when I did in 2014. And I would say that I started lifting and working out for a good purpose in the sense of getting healthy and everything, but that attention is what I craved. And I actually fell out of it. I felt out of love with it because I I realized I wasn't doing it for the right reason anymore. And when I was in college, I realized that the path that I was going on, I couldn't continue it anymore. I couldn't continue the self-destructive, impulsive, and in ways that I was hurting myself and others, because the resentment and the way that I treated my family and everything, and the way that I felt that, I'm hurt, so I'm gonna hurt others, or I'm hurt, so I don't care what I do, I don't care how I act. And it wasn't until God told me, he's like, Ella, if you continue down this path, continue down this self-destructive path, you're gonna die. It's gonna just be darkness, and there's not gonna be any purpose and light to what you're doing. And with my mental health, my first suicide attempt was when I was 12, because I started having seizures when I was in 4th grade, and it wasn't epilepsy. The doctors still don't understand kind of what triggered it. I did get hit pretty hard in the head again when I was in 4th grade, but they don't know if that triggered it or if it was a residual abuse or the trauma from when I was an infant. Because they did do an MRI, and I have scar tissue on my brain still from what happened before. And I had 2 seizures in 4th grade when I was 8, and then I had 2 seizures after that when I was about 10, and it continued on until I was about 8th grade or freshman in high school. And I was actually medically cleared when I was about 15. And when I was 12, I was staying with my aunt and my uncle, and actually ended up taking the whole bottle because I just didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be alone anymore. And when I was 19, same thing. I took a whole bottle of ibuprofen just because it was within reach. It was convenient at the time, and just to try to numb the pain and the feeling of abandonment and the feeling of just being alone and not understood. And my third attempt was going to be when I was 22, but I think that was a moment when God saved me, in the sense of telling me I needed to get help finally, telling me that I needed to stop trying to power through it, or living in this victimhood still, and living in this self-destructive path, and not knowing how to cope through what I've gone through, and coping through the traumatic childhood that I've gone through, and to actually just rise above it and get help. And when I was, I would say the last few years have kind of been the best blessing to me, with meeting my boyfriend, and then with the birth of my son. It was definitely a transformative experience and renewed purpose of, you know what, I still need to get help, but not only for me, for my son, and for my family, and to help others. Because I would say the biggest thing from my childhood was the people around me, my foster parents, my foster mother Peggy, and then her late husband Alan. He ended up passing away, I think she said about 12 years ago, but with staying in touch with her and staying in touch with so many other friends and other family members and meeting new people, it's giving me such a purpose and hope, and the love that I've had from other people, and encouraging me to get help, and encouraging me to rise above and to rely on God in the ways that I can't rely on other people. Because I would say with getting help now, I understand that I need God, but to me it's more of like I want to know why I revert back to that 5-year-old girl who's craving that attention, who's craving that love. and to fully rely on God in that way. Because with my mom now, it's still difficult, but I'm finally putting up that boundary with her. I'm finally putting up that distance with my family, because if I don't, I'm going to still hurt myself, because I finally realized that I love my mom. It's more of just I'm not going to get what I want from her. And I may not get it. I may get it eventually, but I'm not going to get that love, that deep love that I'm craving from her.
Could you tell us a little bit more about just your relationship with your mom and how that generally felt for you?
My mom and I would say since I was a kid, it's always been just attention after and bitterness. It's been difficult because I know she's taken responsibility in the sense of her alcoholism, but I've tried to tell her that it's deeper than that it's deeper than just the alcoholism. It's me wanting that love and adoration from her, and saying that now, it's actually what God has been showing me. He's like, Ella, you're not gonna get what you want from your mom. You need to get it from me. You need to get it from me only, because when I revert back to kind of like my childhood and craving that love and adoration from her, and just honest to goodness, like security and safety and being thought of in such a caring way, that if I don't get it from her, I've tried to get it from other people. And in that too, it's always God telling me that, you know what, it's not from other people, it's from me. And I think that was the biggest thing, is that with being a mama now myself to a 1-year-old, he turned 1 yesterday on the 16th. I need to stop that cycle of abuse, that cycle of trauma, because I know statistically those who are abused abuse their own children too, and I knew I didn't want to continue that. I knew I wanted to get help for myself so that I can be this person that I'm called to be, this woman that I'm called to be, but also a good mother to my son. And my mom is a good mom. We all have our faults, we all have our insecurities and issues and everything like that, but I think it's more of just we are so alike that we may never understand each other. We may never understand what the other person is thinking or what the other person is saying, and we may never fully heal from what we've gone through too, because I know what I've experienced, but with her, it's like I feel like that's why I'm so empathetic. I've gone through what I've gone through, but seeing my mom cope in her own way, it's given me a reason as to why mental health is so important.
What about your relationship with your dad and how that felt?
I don't have any relationship with my biological father. I did reach out to him on Facebook when I was 15, and that protection order that my mom, or that the court had in place, my mom actually found out, and she wasn't angry. She was just telling me that, you know what, I can have him arrested for even talking to you. Because I reached out to him when I was 15, just honestly asking why he did what he did. And he was just telling me, he's like, well, I'm so sorry, I was stupid and egotistical. I'm so sorry, Ella. And it was really just such a profound moment when my mom got remarried, actually, when she met my dad. And he's been the dad that I've known of my whole life, like since I was 11 or 12 or 11. And he actually adopted me when I was 13. And to finally have that father figure in my life, it was such a huge thing, because we talk about how childhood, a person's childhood is so important, especially with a two-parent household, but no one ever talks about how, like, the actual difficulties when it's just a single parent household. I'm not saying that single parents can't do both positions of a mother and a father, or a father and a mother, but it was huge when my dad and my mom got married, because I actually felt that I was loved by a man. And my mom had dated before, but it was always that, oh, well, we don't want to commit because you have a daughter. Oh, we don't want to commit because you have a daughter. And so it was huge when he actually wanted to commit to my mom and to me. And actually took a little bit to convince me, or to actually realize that they were getting engaged, because they had called me and they're like, Ella, we're getting engaged. I'm like, no, what? No, you're not. They're like, Ella, we're really getting engaged. And he's a lawyer, and he's definitely been such a huge provider for my family. And I think the biggest thing is just, I wish I could have had that connection with him, because I know with being a provider, you're not always there physically in the home, and I wish I could have had that actual connection with him, and that actual, like, relationship with him. And I am thankful for what he did and for what he's doing for my family, though.
Can you tell us about your first love and how that felt?
I would say lifting. Lifting was probably the biggest thing, because I had no prior physical activity before I started CrossFit or before I started powerlifting. And my coach, John Brown, and his late wife, Kelly Brown, they took me under their wing when I was 11, and I started their first CrossFit Kids class when I was 12. And it was the most amazing thing, because once my parents got married, he was working at the resort that they got married at, and they took a shooting course from him, since he was teaching a shooting course at the resort. And before they actually moved to their new house, they were living actually a block away from my parents' old house. And much like any other CrossFit gym, they started in their garage. And so my parents were working out. My dad actually went first, and then it was my mom. And then it was, I was watching a few of their workouts in their driveway in, like, a lawn chair. And I was so inspired, and I was like, what? My mom's jumping on this box, my dad's doing this weird bar thing. And it was cool. It gave me such a curiosity of, like, oh wow, that's really cool. And as previously said, I had never been physically active as a child. I wasn't really in any sports programs. I wasn't really eating the best, I'd say, too. And when I was 12, they started their first kids class, and so I did CrossFit from when I was 12 to 18, and I did pretty good. I was probably at my peak in life, peak health, and fitness and everything like that. But when I was 14, I started lifting. I started CrossFit, I started powerlifting, and it was to get out of CrossFit, because I had made CrossFit like my whole life at that point, and lifting was new and it was exciting. It was like, wow, I'm so strong. Look what I can do. Look what I can push my body to do. And I went to state powerlifting competition when I was 14, and I was nervous, because with powerlifting competitions, it's you have a squat attempt, you have a deadlift attempt, and you have a bench attempt, and you have 3 attempts per weightlifting movement. And it was nerve-wracking, kind of just being on that stage and having the audience stare at you and the judges scoring you. But after my first attempt, or after my first meet, it was kind of a relief to just, okay, I did it. That's under my belt. I know what to expect. I know what to look for. And I went to state again, or I went to nationals after that when I was 15. And nationals, again, it was very nerve-wracking. It was in Killeen, Texas, my first nationals. And I ended up going to state again the next year, and then to nationals after that. And the nationals I went to in 2013 allowed me to qualify for the World Powerlifting team when I was 17, 18. And not only that, but my mom competed as well. So it was a unique experience to be able to qualify for her. And I felt that was what connected me the most to her was, wow, I'm doing this with my mother. I'm doing this with her. And we actually ended up going to Potchefstroom, South Africa for our World Powerlifting team. And I ended up placing third out of the girls in my group. And it was, I think at that moment I realized that I wasn't doing it for the right reason anymore. I wasn't pursuing it wholeheartedly that I was before when I had first started. And I was also, I had an injury. I partially strained my hamstring, and rather than actually getting the help that I needed to heal it, I was just pushing it more and more, overworking it more and more. And I loved it. I loved just CrossFit and powerlifting so much that when I kind of fell out of love with it, I wanted to get back into it, but I was so afraid because I was like, oh, you know what? Like people are going to judge me. People are going to be like, oh, well, Ella used to do this. Why can't you do it anymore? And more so of just being hard on myself too, because it was for wanting to get back into it. I wanted to get back into it for that health reason. And I want to, even more so with having my son, and I want to be able to be healthy for him and be healthy for me and my family.
What about your first loss or heartbreak? Same thing, whatever you associate with your first loss or heartbreak, and how that felt.
My first loss and heartbreak was probably losing my great-grandmother when I was 14. She was a matriarch of our family. She was actually the mother of my papa. And it was, I think that was the biggest experience of death that I actually recall. I know with my papa dying when I was 4, I don't remember that as much, but with my great-grandmother dying, I think that was the biggest thing that I realized. I was like, you know what? Death is imminent. Death is imminent among any of us. And that belief in God is, I think, crucial to me as well. Because I've had many of my friends pass away when I was in high school, just freak accidents. And with the death of my great-grandma, it was hard because I know with my grandma, she was very close with her, and with her being the matriarch, it was kind of like a breakup of the family in a way, but it allowed us to kind of just get closer and realize that, you know what, because she died before her 100th birthday, or her 101st birthday, and when she passed away, I realized, you know what, like, she lived through the Great Depression. She lived through like some of the most trying moments, and to live a life that abundantly, it was amazing to realize.
Who would you say first taught you love, and how?
I would say it was a multitude of people, just friends and other family, or even my foster parents coming alongside me when I needed that comfort and that security the most. Because with my foster parents, they're actually I'm still friends with and still connected with my foster mother, and she's given me, because of what they've done, they've given me that desire to be a foster parent and to adopt children of my own, because of what I've gone through and because of what they've gone through and what they've done themselves, and just other family members and friends that have loved me when I've needed it the most. And especially with my son and my boyfriend right now, it's, you don't know the depth of the love you have for a child until you experience it yourself. And once my son was born, and even with his birthday yesterday, this past year has been such a tremendous moment for both me and my boyfriend, and me just discovering what it is to be a mom, and discovering, like, you know what, not only is it about myself, but it's about him, it's about my family. And to actually love this tiny human, it's such a unique experience that God has given us to be able to experience that love for a child.
What's your definition of love?
That's a difficult question. Love to me is a choice. Love to me is not just the emotion, it's the ability to continue to care for that person regardless of how you feel or what they've done to you, or how no matter how hurt you are. And to love somebody is to put them first, to put their needs first, to put that person on the forefront of your mind, and to choose them every day. And when I was a little girl, I struggled with that. I struggled with understanding what it meant to be loved, to understand what it meant to be loved in a good way. And with right now, I mean, it's still difficult. I'm still battling like what it is. But at the end of the day, I know that with God, it's His love for us, and it's His purpose for us as to why we're alive, as to why our story, and to why our life matters. And it wasn't until that third attempt that I realized, I was like, you know what, I have a purpose. God does love me. God has a reason for me to be alive. God does choose me every time that I fall, I stumble, or I sin. And despite everything that I've done, He still chooses me. And for me to finally understand that, and for me to finally work through what I've gone through, it's been such a weight off my shoulders, because I've gone through life just wondering, like, who's going to love me, who's going to finally understand me. And with having a family of my own, it's been such a humbling and unique experience.
How do you love yourself?
With loving myself, it's been a long, difficult journey. I didn't love myself when I was younger, and I still battle with it to this day, with my weight, or with my identity, or with what I do. But with loving myself, I am choosing to be better. I'm choosing to get help. I'm choosing to be there for my son and my boyfriend and my family. I'm choosing to be there in a way that I can help others eventually, to get to a place where they themselves can feel that their life is valuable.
That's one of the things you do to show yourself that you love yourself.
I look back and I realize that, you know, with what I've gone through, it's not who I am. It's not what God tells me I am. It's more of that I I've gone through what I've gone through because of choices and actions that I made, but also rising above it and realizing that I myself need God in a way that people need him, because we can't do it ourselves. We can't be our own savior. We have to rely on God. We have to have that help from other people. And with loving myself and how I do it, it's by getting help. It's by going to God in the quiet moments. It's by going to God in the busy moments, in the loud moments of my life, and realizing that I can't do it alone. I can't force somebody to love me. I can't force someone to change their mind or to do what I want them to do.
What's a good day look like for you?
A good day looks like the apartment is cleaned. I've taken my son out on a walk and my dog on a walk. And I've gone to my appointments, or I've gone to work, and I'll draw, or I'll paint, and I'll pray to God and just be thankful of what I have and where I'm at in my life, and I'll just be content in that moment.
What's a bad day look like, and how do you get through that bad day?
My son has been teething the last few months, and it's been very difficult because he's been irritable, and there are moments where I'm feeling so overwhelmed that I'll hold him and I'll hug him, and I'll just tell him, I'm like, you know what, it's okay, like, you're gonna be okay, I'm here, Mama's here, and to just kind of stop what I'm doing, or stop doing the dishes, stop doing the laundry, and just be there for him. Because with having him being irritable, I know with a child it's scary when you don't know your emotions and everything. So I try to be there for him in those moments where I don't think I have it all together, and in that moment I feel that I'm calmed down, and I can be there for him.
What's been a humbling experience for you?
I'd say motherhood in general. Very humbling, and realizing that from my childhood and my mom and even now, it's you do what you can for your child, regardless if it's right or if it's wrong, and to think you need to have it all together, I'd say, because having ADHD, I was diagnosed a few years ago, and it's kind of made sense, because when I was a student, I was very forgetful, or I was procrastinating, or I had my interests and my dislikes, and with having ADHD and with being a mother, it's been very overwhelming, because I can be very disorganized, and I can be very messy and very forgetful, and even with time management, but with humbling experience, yeah, I would definitely say motherhood, because as soon as your baby is born, I mean, they need you. But as they grow and as they progress in their own stages, they become more mobile. They become more aware, and in that moment, it's as much as you want to be frustrated, as much as you want to be just kind of not in this position anymore, being a parent. It's that moment where, you know what, this little human, my son is relying on me. I need to be there for him. I need to stop what I'm doing, or I need to just take a moment to breathe and to remind myself that, you know what, God has allowed you to be his mom, and he needs you right now. no matter what you look like or what you're doing. And it's I'm thankful for the year that I've had with my son. And to realize that, you know what, like with what I've gone through with my mom, it's taken me a long time to realize that, you know what, she loves me in her own way, and I may not want to get that love that I want from her, but she still does love me in her own way. It's more of that I need to realize that what I want versus what she wants is very different.
So for this next question, if you can go in your mind and think, this life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual, can you tell me about a time in your life that you relate to the word war?
When I first got help from my psychologist, because I saw a woman for a few years, and when I first got help, she gave me the diagnosis of CPTSD, and I just was like, what? No, I can't have that. And I told myself, no, like only people who have gone through actual trauma or gone through war can only have that kind of diagnosis. But it wasn't until I looked into it more, and it wasn't until I actually got help from a different woman as my insurance changed, that I realized, I was like, you know what, it is basically a war of like what of my coping mechanisms and the way that I've tried to reach people to tell them what I've gone through, or to explain to them what I've gone through. And even with my parents and my mom especially, it's been such a trying time to tell them that like I love them, but if they want to be in my life, I needed them to realize that what they were doing is hurtful, or what they were doing is not going to be beneficial to me. And with what I've gone through and what I've experienced, I feel like I've always been at the state of the flight, freeze, or fight. And it is such a war, because with how I've coped, it's like, you realize that you want to stop, but then you don't know how to stop. So it is a war within yourself of, no, it's good. It's that comfort. It's that moment of going back to what's comforting to you and what's going to be protective of you, because approaching this scary moment is scary. You don't want to do it. You don't want to put yourself out there. You don't want to get better. You want to keep living in this habit, in this moment where it's going to just be comfortable to you because of what you've gone through. But I'd say again, since being a mom and since the last few years of realizing that with the self-destructive path that I was going down, it may be comforting, it may be temporarily comforting, but it was going to be that self-destructive path of darkness and death that God told me that I was going to go down if I wasn't going to get right with Him anymore.
What did getting right with God look like?
What getting right with God looked like was taking the moment to realize that, you know what, it wasn't just my parents' fault. It wasn't just everybody else's fault for what I've gone through. It was taking ownership of my choices and my decisions and the way that I've coped that led to that self-destructive path of promiscuity, of being impulsive, of being financially reckless, that led me to realize that I was like, you know what? The Lord is right. I'm going to continue down this path if I don't turn back to Him. And this path is only going to lead to further hurt and further pain. And it was a matter of realizing that I needed to own what I've done, and to forgive, and to honestly forgive the people who've hurt me, and to forgive my mom. Forgive her for what I've gone through, and to love her the way she is, and to love my family the way that they are, and to realize that I can continue to live in this bitterness and in this anger, but it won't be healing.
Would you describe God as love itself?
Yes, I would say that from the moment I was born until now, he's had a purpose for my life, and that purpose is to help people, and to make sure that nobody feels that darkness alone. Is being suicidal and actually going forth with committing suicide, in those moments, I only felt darkness. I didn't feel a purpose. I didn't feel hope. I didn't feel that my life was worth continuing. And God is just, he's good, and he's love, and he's warmth, and he has that everlasting peace and understanding that he's going to give people, and he's going to provide them that safety and security that other comforts or other people can't provide. And I feel like it's going to be a continued battle for me to understand that, but also to work through how to cope better, and to have better coping mechanisms, and to realize that no matter what I've done, and no matter what my actions and decisions have been, he still loves me. Because I had a lot of shame and condemnation because of what I've done, and because of my choices and my decisions in life. And to fully realize that, because I went to the Bible college when I was 18 to 20, and I do believe that going to the Bible college set me up for success, for realizing that foundation of my faith, and to realize that God is there, and God loves me more than I realize and can comprehend.
Can you tell me about a truly difficult time in your life, how it felt, how you endured?
When I was after college, I kind of really didn't know what I was going to do. I graduated when I was 20 because it was a 2-year Bible college, and I felt lost. I felt that I wanted to do something. I wanted to go back to school, and with having that depression and anxiety that I had, it was dark. I didn't eat right. I didn't sleep right. I wasn't working out. I wasn't healthy, and I was being bombarded by my family to kind of like to do something, to oh no, you just need to push yourself, you need to do this. And it was actually a very humbling experience in and of itself too, because my dad's sister, I reached out to her. I was like, you told me when I was in high school, when Robin Williams passed away, I had put up a thing on mental health on Facebook, and she approached me, and she told me of a personal moment in her life where mental health and suicide, it can be real, or is real. And I wasn't at that age, and I wasn't at that place to receive what she said. Right. I kind of dismissed it and pushed it away. But in that moment where I was helpless and I felt alone, I was like, you know what? Out of everybody who I've talked to, or everybody who doesn't understand what I'm going through, she does. And I I had a moment where I reached out to her and we reconnected in April of last year, and it was really, really just humbling and such a good moment to reconnect with her, because I was able to apologize. I was able to just tell her like what was going on and everything, and she provided that comfort that I needed and that understanding. And then with my family, it was more of realizing that being a people pleaser is what I shouldn't be doing anymore. I can't keep putting my needs into other people's hands and how I do things, and I can't keep putting my actions into other people's hands and how I do things.
So for this next question, it's the same like one of the previous questions. If you can go in your mind and think, this life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell me about a time in your life that you relate to the word peace?
I would say after that moment of God telling me that I needed to get help, it was such a moment of peace and clarity of finally being able to get away from this darkness that I was pursuing, in the darkness that I felt comfort in the ways that I was ruining my life, in the peace of realizing that if I continued to believe in God and I continued to surrender that part of my life, it was going to bring peace. And it finally did bring that peace when I started to go to church more. I started to be to not be as isolated and to be around other people of like mind, and other people who actually lifted me up and not broke me down. And that peace was there when my son was born. That peace and that love was there when I realized that it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about this little human and my son who needed me, and God coming alongside me in that moment of being there and allowing me to be content finally, where I didn't need to be in that constant state of fear and of abandonment.
What inspires you?
I would say I follow this gentleman on Instagram. He's Victor Marks. He himself went through a very traumatic childhood, and he uses that to share with others and to bring other people to God. And he himself has a heart to reach people who have gone through human trafficking. So he started a group called All Things Possible. It's a ministry that helps women domestically and internationally in regards to human trafficking and overcoming their abuse and being victorious of it. And I wanted to be a police officer after college, and I did apply to be an officer, and I started to go through the training and everything. But with my injury that I sustained when I was younger, it started to come back. And even though that door was temporarily closed to be a police officer, I did study cybersecurity a few years ago in 2020. And so I'm hoping, because I was supposed to take the test, but with being pregnant and then with my son, I pushed it off. So with taking the test this year, I'm hoping to pursue my foot, or to pursue that career, and to put my foot in the door to help people, much like he does with human trafficking. I hope to kind of work up to the federal level in the cybercrime division and to help people with human trafficking.
What's the happiest moment in your life, or one of the happiest moments in your life?
I'd say the first happiest moment was my lifting competition. To be on that platform and to experience that level of fitness was honestly just amazing. When I was in South Africa, I was around people from South Africa. I was around people from Australia, Sweden, Samoa, and all of these athletes, tremendous strength, and even athletes on Team USA. Their sheer level of power and strength was such a unique experience, and then being able to be on the same platform as them was incredible. And the birth of my son was probably the second happiest moment. I had a very hard pregnancy. I was constantly sick and vomiting and with dealing with extreme nausea and indigestion. My son was born actually 12 days early. He was supposed to be born the 28th, but he came the 16th. And it was honestly the most elated I've ever been. And I always knew I was going to be a mom. I never knew how it was going to be, or I never imagined how it was going to be, but I'm deeply thankful for how it happened. And with his birth, I had COVID, and so I was the only one sick. My boyfriend wasn't sick, and they tested baby, but he was good. And I was actually talking with the nurses at the hospital that I gave birth at, and they were telling me that before I gave birth, like when COVID first started, they actually separated the mom and the dad and the baby, whoever like tested positive for it. So I was shocked when that happened, and I was very thankful that we were all able to be together, even though my boyfriend was not able to leave the hospital, just since they weren't going to allow him back. But despite that, like, I was very thankful, and we were very elated to experience that moment together.
What keeps you going every day?
My faith in God and in my purpose, and to be able to be there for my family, and my son and my boyfriend, and to be able to continue that passion and that desire that I know I'm called to help people. We might be moving to California. And I was talking with my foster mom, because we went to her house down in Canyon City for Thanksgiving, and her son is actually in cybersecurity, and he was telling me, he's like, do you want to continue studying and then take the test when you're in your 30s, or do you want to continue studying and take the test now in order to have your foot in the door and do it? And I think that was the biggest thing. I was like, oh wow, like he's right. Like because I'll be 27 this year, so I know I'm still young, but at the same time, I shouldn't still put it off. I shouldn't kind of push it off to the side. I needed to continue to study, and I know that, especially with wanting to provide for my family.
Imagine you're in the hospital today with only hours to live. What would be your regrets, if any?
I would say my regret would be not forgiving anybody that I was still holding that bitterness to. And then my regret would be to not be healthy, to not because with my depression and everything, I've gone to food for coping, and so I would say, like, my regret would just be living how I've been, and I know with giving birth and being pregnant, it changes your body as well. but with being healthy, I would say, in actually being there more physically with my son and more physically for my own well-being, but and then especially again with my relationship with my family, because I've told people, I'm like, you know what, if it comes to it, I don't want that continued relationship with my mom to get to that point where I don't really care if she dies, or I don't care what happens to her or what happens to anybody else. Because I know for one thing, if I get to that point, then it's not God. It's not God's power of restoration and reconciliation that's able. And I realized, I was like, you know, if I allow it to get to that point, then I'm stopping God's power and what he's capable of.
So you're alive and well. Do you feel that you can change or amend or be at peace with the regrets that you just stated moving forward?
No. I would definitely say that with the regrets that I've stated, it's more of a reason to work on them. It's more of a reason to allow God to work through the areas that I can't work through. And I know I've said it before, those relationships and the dynamic, I've tried so hard to do it myself. I've exhausted and I've been hurt, and I've allowed my mental health to suffer because of it. But relying on God and realizing that, you know what, there is a reason as to why man can't do things alone. Man doesn't have the power to fix things. So it's that realization that I need to rely on God and allow him to work through my heart and my mom's and my family's. And with being healthy, I think the biggest thing is with mental health, it's mental, but it's also physical. And we go to the doctor for our physical health, and to realize that with getting help for my mental health, I also need to get help for my physical health, and I need to treat it the same way that I treat my mental health right now, in the same way that God wants us to treat our bodies too, and to not to abuse it anymore, not to cope in the way that I have been with food.
So you told me what your dreams were as a kid. I think you may have mentioned maybe in cybersecurity, but I'm curious to know, what are your dreams now?
My dream now would be, because I actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was feeling nostalgic the other day, and I was like, you know what? I was literally at this place when I was 12. So my sister is 14, and my brother is 13, and I was telling my sister when she was 12, I was like, you know what? When I was your age, I just couldn't wait till I was driving. I couldn't wait to see where I was at in my life, and I had a vision when I was younger of like being a trainer and helping other people. But then now that I'm at that age, it's different. It looks different, and it's okay that it's different. I think that's the biggest thing, is that I've had such a hard time realizing, is that the way that we view things and the way that we think things are going to happen, they may happen, but it's always at a different pace. And I have that family that I've always wanted. I have that child and that love through my son and in my family that I've always wanted, and even through God. And I have that renewed hope to be better for them and to be better for myself, even if it doesn't look like I'm going to be a trainer, or if it doesn't look like I'm going to be a police officer in the capacity that I want to. studying cybersecurity or even pursuing psychology, I do hope to be that person in that individual that loves somebody in order to help them. Because with cybersecurity and even with psychology, I hope to pursue it in order to bring that hope and to bring that peace to other people. Because that's why I wanted to be an officer is because of that that security and that peace I felt as a little girl when they came to me. And with studying psychology or even cybersecurity, I know I'm called to it because of what I've gone through. I know I'm called to it because I have such a unique experience and such a unique perspective of reaching people. And I believe that is what God has called us to is, you know what? I've gone through it. I'm learning how to live above it. And I want to help you. I want to help you be this person that He's called you to be. I want to help you learn that you're not alone and know that you're not alone in this.
You're the co-author of your life story. What's your picture perfect ending? And
I would say if we were to ever have more children, it would be just living somewhere in the country or in the mountains and just being with my family or being with those who I love and my friends and watching my children grow up and having their own husband or wife and being with my grandkids and just loving that moment that I'm in.